Hello and welcome today to the Christian Construction Podcast. We hope you'll stay tuned for today's episode as we talk about how to get ready for revival. All right, well, it's good to be back here on the podcast here on this Friday at noon. We hope that you're having a great day, had a great week, and here we are in 2020, and this is our second episode of this new year, new decade, and so we're excited about what the Lord has in store for us in our own lives, and then, of course, in our church. And while we're talking about the church, Love Valley Baptist Church, that is our church. It's our I'll say supporting church.
I guess so. That's what you'd say.
I guess it is, right? Support church. They support us. We have their backing, and so yeah, we're very thankful for that. This is a ministry out of the Love Valley Baptist Church. Our pastor is Pastor Barry Philbeck, and we do appreciate him and our church letting us come to you through these means. And we do hope the podcast is a blessing to you. Got the chance to speak with some folks who watched the podcast on the phone. Folks called our church here recently, and I didn't tell y'all about that, but called asking about revival meetings, said they watched the podcast, and then I've run into people locally here who watch the podcast and say they really enjoy it, and it's a blessing to them, and we appreciate you tuning in. And then also want to thank our friends over at the Higher Grounds podcast. We hope you'll be tuning in over there with Brother Andy Wells, Brother Michael Poindexter, Brother Stephen Aldridge, and Brother Matthew Tucker are co-hosts together on the Higher Grounds podcast, and them also our friends at the local church Bible publishers, who we still have a Bible that we've got to give away at some point, and so we're going to try our best to do that. So we're wanting to end this year.
It's happening.
So we're going to make that happen. So, Brother Keith, our regular co-host now, no longer the mysterious man behind the curtain. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing well. How you doing, Brother Michael?
I'm wonderful. You ready for revival?
I love this time of year.
Well,
if you're not, our revival.
If you're not, we're going to tell you how to get ready, right?
Yeah, right.
Brother Matt, how you doing today?
I am just swell.
How's married life?
It's still great.
That's great.
Yeah.
Give us some time.
It ain't,
All
turned,
right.
around, it ain't turned around yet.
Oh, man. Gabe knows it's true. No. Gabe, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good.
Hey, man, praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Ain't it good to be saved?
It is.
We've seen the Lord do great work around here in the past few weeks, and our young people, and then we had folks that were visiting with us, had some folks get saved, and so we are very, very thankful for that. And so we're excited about this topic we want to talk about today. It's kind of a practical thing. It's,
yeah, absolutely.
Some would say, well, that's not even biblical. Well, that's debatable, but I do think it's biblical to be prepared to come to the house of God the right way. Yeah. And at the same time, I think there are some practical things that everybody's different about. I think some of the things that we're going to tell you today, I think every pastor would agree with it. And I think it's crucial. I mean, it's important to the work of God. And along these thoughts, along this line, I remember a saying I heard years ago: what kind of church would my church be if every church member were just like me? So when we think about preparing for revival, think about it along these lines. What if everybody prayed leading into revival the way I prayed? How good, if it was all dependent on me, how good would it be? If everybody else put in as much when it comes to cleaning and being available and helping, how good would the meeting go? And so today, that's what we're going to talk about. Now, all that being said, before we start to deal with this, you may say, well, what do you guys know? You've never pastored. You're exactly right. Never pastored. But sitting right here today, Brother Matt grew up in a pastor's home, has lived the ministry his whole life. The Lord called him to preach as a young man. Well, how old, 10, 11?
Preach.
How old? Yeah.
14.
14, I was off.
Saved at
I'm
10.
thinking Brother Josh.
Saved
Brother Josh
at 10.
Montgomery. Saved at 10, preaching at 14 years old. So has grown up in the ministry and now is in the ministry himself. Brother Gabe, who has grown up around the things of God, has preachers in his family, so he's no stranger to being familiar with the ministry, is a preacher himself. And you've been preaching for how long now, Brother Gabe?
Since 2014.
2014. Then Brother Keith, you got saved in 2010. Coming up, is it
2011?
11. Coming
Yes,
up on 9 years. And you've been preaching for how long?
The same. I got called to preach later in 2011.
2011. All right. So I say that because none of us have pastored, right?
Right.
But we've all been in the ministry, and our goal has been to be a help to our pastor. And in doing that, not to seem critical, but you do notice that everybody is not as invested. And so
Right.
my thinking has been, I wish more people would get involved. I don't want to say, well, I wish they would do as much as I do. I don't want it to sound that way. But I do wish people would get involved. Some people can get involved more than others.
Well, and it's important that people just don't need to be oblivious to the importance of what's getting
Exactly.
ready. The church is putting in money, it's putting in time, and this is
Yeah.
your meeting.
That's
And
exactly
the truth
right.
is when your church is putting on this meeting, most meetings are not for everybody else. It's really for your church.
That's exactly right. Now, that being said, we've got a revival meeting coming up, and this is one of the things that we really we're just happy about being able to have it. We get to have this meeting every year. We put up 30 to 40 preachers and their families, missionaries. We usually have, over the course of the week, about 100 preachers coming to the meeting. Some stay in hotels, some are just driving in from one day to the next. So the meeting actually starts this coming Sunday. Brother Keith Voyle is going to be kicking it off. And then we'll have guest preachers starting on Monday night at 7 o'clock. Brother Buster Mullins will actually preach Monday night. And then Tuesday, we have service at 2 o'clock. A meal at 5, service at 7. Wednesday, service at 2 o'clock, meal at 5, service at 7. And so different preachers and singers, and we'll maybe talk more about that in just a few moments. But what we want to talk about today is what makes a revival meeting like this work. Well, the pastor himself cannot do it all. It takes work, it takes help, it takes everybody doing it. So we're going to jump right into it. And so I'm just going to throw some thoughts out here. We're going to pass it around the table and go from one to the next. I have a list of like pros and cons. So I have a what to do and then a what not to do. So why don't we do it like this, man? Why don't we talk about what to do, and then I'll jump to the other side and do a what not to do. First, what to do is pretty simple. Be faithful, right?
Oh, yeah, it's
Be
simple.
Be faithful. Any thoughts on that? Just be faithful, man. Be there, right?
Yeah,
be there
be there
in
as
your
much
place.
as you possibly can be. I mean, I'd say it's the least you could do, but it's Romans 12:1-2. It's the least you could do.
If you
I mean,
can't
your
do
reasonable
anything
service,
else.
buddy.
Right.
If you can't do anything else, you can be faithful, right?
That's right.
And so, secondly, let's jump to the what not to do, and these are in no particular order. So some of these are going to be real sporadic. What not to do? The week of revival meeting. Don't plan a vacation.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have this particular meeting basically the same week every year, and it never fails. Someone will come up, but I made plans, or I done this, or I done that. Or I'm not saying that I necessarily, but every church has a meeting that they do
Right.
a certain time, and there will be somebody without fail who will. But I had plans. I had this.
Right. I got something going on.
Yeah, don't plan a vacation. Don't plan a vacation the week that your church is having a revival meeting.
And we announce it the same way every year. It's the second full week.
Second full-
week of January.
Second full
every
week.
Year.
And we don't even
Wait.
give a date, but second full week. How much more plain could that be?
I'm afraid a lot of times, we look at it as the preacher's just having that meeting so he can have his friends in, he can have his buddies in. But I promise you, Pastor Barry Philbeck, right now, a week from today, about this time, we'll be
Yeah, this
we'll
is on
be
Monday
gearing
we're
things
recording.
up. We'll be about to go to prayer room. We're recording on a Monday. We'll be gearing up, but this time a week before that begins, I know that I have a pastor who's not worried about himself.
Right,
Now,
right.
that's not to say he's not going to get help. He will. The Lord's going to help him.
Yep.
The Lord's going to meet his needs because God's faithful to us. But he's focused, I know, praying, Lord, I pray you'd do something special for
That's
Matt
right.
Panther. Lord,
That's
I
right.
pray you would meet the desires of Brother Keith Norman's
I
heart.
believe that.
He's going in his mind through this flock that the Lord's given him to shepherd. And man, you're really robbing your pastor
That's right.
when he's. I know. All he's thinking about right now is I hope this one's here and I hope this one's here.
Right.
Not because he wants a big crowd, not because he wants his buddies to see how full the church is.
Sure, yeah.
But because he knows the Lord's going to show up.
That's
He
right.
knows
Right.
Yeah.
that God's got something prepared.
Well,
and
speaking of the Lord showing up, that takes us to the next point, which is praying. We
Yeah.
need to be, when you come to revival meeting, if I don't pray any other time, I'll be praying
Right.
about revival meeting, and
Yeah.
that kind of leads into Brother Gabe was going to read some scripture about getting ready and being prepared when it comes to getting ready for church. So, Brother Gabe, you're in Genesis 35.
Yeah, Genesis 35, Genesis chapter number 35. Verse number 1, believe it or not. Yeah, verse
Amen.
number 1. Well, my thought, it's very practical, but it's where God's talking to Jacob, and he's telling him, hey, I want you to go back up to Bethel. And he's already kind of dealt with Esau, which is in my mind a perfect picture of the flesh. Yeah. And he's dealing with something, and God's trying to get him to go up to Bethel, but there's some things he's got to deal with before he goes. Verse number 2 says this, then Jacob said unto his household, and to all that were with him, put away the strange gods that are among you. So your idols, the things you like to do, the things that's taking place in your life, the ball games, the hunting and the fishing, put those things away because we got to go to church.
That's right.
And then he says, and be clean. That's the time where you look back and say, hey, there's might be some things in my life that I need to get out of here so I can meet with God. And this is in change your garments. Put on some good clothes. I believe you ought to wear your best. And I believe you ought to wear your best every time you go to the house of God.
That's right.
But that's where you get your suit pressed, like what Brother Keith talked about. You go get a haircut. You look your best, one, to represent your church the best way.
That's right.
But two,
That's
you're
right.
meeting with God. You're going for revival, and revival is not just a word that we use for a meeting, a church meeting. We're wanting God to revive our hearts, our soul, and our spirit. And we're hoping that God helps us.
That's right. Brother Keith, take us on that next one on that what not to do. What's some things not to do during the week of revival meeting? After we talked about planning a vacation, don't plan a vacation. What else would you not do during a revival meeting?
I think one of the things that would be don't complain. Don't complain. It never fails the person who is the least involved and the least vested in the ministry has something to complain about. The money, the lights, the mess. There's something always not
And
right.
I can't believe they're only having spaghetti tonight. I had spaghetti last week.
Yeah.
Well, why do we have to have it 3 days? Why can't we have it 2?
Why
are we not having
church
4
building-
days?
Why is this church building so full?
Yeah.
I ain't got nowhere to sit. Somebody's in my seat.
Well, that right there will
It'll
happen.
happen.
And a lot of churches say, hey, man,
It'll
that
happen.
visitor's in my seat, and it'll be ridiculous.
And that kind of takes us to the next one, which is on the what to do list. You're going to have guests.
Yes.
Now around here, we got pastor started a couple years ago saying he said I don't want to say visitors. I don't like saying visitors because a visitor is somebody that's coming and they're leaving. We want guests to come, and so when people come to our church, just in our regular services, we would refer to them as guests. And so, in the sense that revival meeting, we know that these people are coming. They're going to go back to their church,
Right.
but still, they are our guests. They're
Yes.
coming to our church. Let them have your seat. Let them have your place.
Absolutely.
Help them find somewhere to sit.
Yeah.
Make sure they're comfortable. You want them to come back later.
We've had the testimony said multiple times of a pastor or somebody that's been broken, the devil's fighting them.
Absolutely.
And they've come in here, and some way God works in their life to keep them from quitting.
And could have been what kept them in the ministry, in the fight, in the
And all it took
by
was the
their own
right member.
testimony.
Yeah, and all it took was I say the right member, but the wrong member to say, hey, man, you're in my seat, or
That's
hey,
right.
this is my parking spot, and totally ruin the whole atmosphere.
And
before
as
we get
far
to
as
the service.
and then on the flip side, all it takes is the right member to say, "Hey, you can have my seat."
Absolutely.
Stay
Glad to
right-
see
hey,
you, brother. Glad
yeah,
you be
glad
here.
you was
That's
able to
good.
make it. We love
That's
having
good.
you here, brother Matt. On the what not to do, what's next on the list behind complaining?
But volunteering for overtime. As we go into the week, I know everybody. People probably think we beat a dead horse about overtime on here, don't?
That's,
We're
we
not-
believe in providing
we-
for your
we be-
family.
We believe in
Don't
overtime.
misunderstand.
Trust me.
Absolutely.
All of us have worked many, many hours of overtime. But why don't you work overtime the week before and make the extra money?
There you go.
Because you got to take a little time off the
Yeah,
next week.
yeah.
Yeah.
Make sure the week after that you tell your boss, I'm going to need some extra hours to make up for the time that I'm going to be off. Don't set it for that week.
That's right.
Just make
would-
sure that, I've yet to meet, I hear some horror stories, but I'm yet to meet a boss that is that ununderstanding.
Right.
Or not whatever the word is. I'm yet to meet a boss that if you tell him, look, I can't work 2 hours over today because I got to get home and I got to pray and get ready and I got to get my family to church in time for prayer room tonight. I'm yet to meet one to say I just can't let you do that. You got to stay here.
Well, those guys that work overtime there, they're not going to work overtime the week the rut's in. They're not going to work
Hey.
overtime the week that playoffs are on.
Yeah.
March Madness, I'm not working overtime because I got to watch my team.
That's right.
And you're not willing to do it then, but
Well,
you're
we're
willing
not-
to do it then.
Now we're not talking about if that's when your work schedule is. We're talking about people
Absolutely.
that you would normally get off at 3
Yeah.
or at 3:30 or 4 o'clock. But
Choosing.
You know, I could
choosing
take
to work.
another. I could go for another couple of hours. You know?
Right.
All right, so I'm gonna take the next one.
You need to, bro.
I'm
Oh,
all
sorry.
about
The
this.
next. It was the next one that I thought
I'm
you didn't
taking it. Well, I'll take the one after that. I'll get to that.
You
in just
need
a
that,
minute.
bro.
Be early. We were talking about this before we come on the air. I don't know how, and I know there are circumstances in everybody's life. I cannot walk into a service at the church, at my church. Now, if I get somewhere and I'm not leading in anything, it's not my church, and I still want to be early, but I don't have to be early. But at my church, I want to make sure that everything that I have to do is ready and that everything's in its place. I want to be there to welcome people. I want to be there to make sure I'm doing my job. So I think it's important to be early. If you're in a church like ours, there's going to be a prayer room. So you ought to be early so you can be in prayer room. Your choir's going to assemble before service. You ought to be in the choir on time. And if go use the bathroom before the service starts. Don't wait until afterwards to do all that. Be there early. Welcome people. Greet people. And be prepared. You can't just walk out of the cares of life and just rush right into the presence of God. It just don't work that way. It's all part of that preparation. Now, I'm going to take the next one. Don't get sick during a week of revival. And I speak from experience. When we go into revival meeting in January, we all get on antibiotics and vitamin C. And
Y'all think we're joking.
I'm chewing on ginger root and honey and airborne and what is that? Emergency.
Taking Quaaludes.
And we're taking.
You got the
We're doing all
Everything
of it.
you got to
got the
do.
diffuser beside the
I
bed.
don't even remember this podcast being
We're
recorded.
meeting guys on the corner street, get whatever we need to keep us
Reason we're doing it
good.
on Mondays. We don't think we could do it
We
later
don't-
in the week.
We're not real sure there's another day of the week right now. So don't get sick. And I say that jokingly. Take care of yourself. Be prepared. If you feel like you're going to be, if we were planning a vacation or if it was the rut was coming in, we would go do everything we had to do to make sure, well, this is happening next week. I want to get my medicine and get over the sickness before such and such happens. So don't get sick during a week of revival. All right, Brother Gabe, next on the what to do. Have you got a list in front of you?
I do.
It
says
do.
clear your schedule.
Yeah.
Which is something we've kind of already talked about and hit on, but it's put those things that you normally would do, and those things, honestly, January, there's things that I want to do.
Sure.
But I will not do it that week because I know there's too much riding on the next week and on the week of revival for me to go playing and fooling around with other things because I need to have my mind right.
Yeah, bro,
That's
my
right,
daughter's
right.
got basketball practice.
Anything,
Tuesday
or
night.
ballet, or I mean, it's like all kinds of
Ballet.
things. You can come up with all kinds of
Well,
reasons.
you got a lot more problems if you're letting your kids do ballet anyway.
My son, but no, I'm just kidding.
Brother Matt, next on the what not to do list.
see,
What do
well-
you not want to do? Don't do this.
I can't
And this is
even read
pretty
your
simple.
hand right.
Don't.
bro.
Well, I mean, it's chicken scratch. I'll just tell. Don't wait to get prepared.
Don't
right?
wait to get prepared.
Thank you. That was good. I'm glad you thought of that. So anyway, is that all you got? That's good, man.
Man.
Next.
No, don't wait to get prepared. Basically, how we're looking at it. Well, as we were talking about earlier, we're a week away now, but we're not starting to prepare now. I know these men. Ain't none of us. Whether it's Brother Michael, he works here at the church, and he's been preparing for a long time for more people than himself to be at this meeting. To Brother Gabe, he knows there's that he's got a work schedule. Brother Keith's got a work schedule. I got a work schedule. Each and every one of us have been looking at this time for months, saying, this is what I need to do so I can be here at this time. This is what I need to accomplish. This is what I need to get done so that it's not in the way. And beyond that, it's a lot more than physical, but there's a spiritual aspect to it. We talked about prayer, but beyond that, won't we ought to examine our lives. Look, what am I doing that could hinder me from receiving what God's got in store? What kind of sin, what kind of toy, what is it that's in my life that I could set aside, I could get forgiveness for, whatever it is, and I would say even more than that, don't just look at your own life, look at your family's life, have conversation with them.
Absolutely.
What do we need to do to have ourselves prepared for this coming week?
And don't wait till the week of revival. Simply put, don't wait till the week of revival to get revived.
Yeah.
Be revived before that so that you can
Right,
be more effective.
right.
Brother Keith, would you take that next one on the what to do list? What should you do?
I
And
Brother
you
Michael
tie both
mentioned
of those in together if you want to.
He can't read it neither.
He can't.
Brother Michael mentioned being early, and I was going to say this right after, but one of the greatest blessings that I've ever got out of and will ever get out of most of our revivals is being available.
Yeah.
And part of being early is being available.
Yeah.
There are times when I get here, you can get here about an hour early, and we've had. The Hensons, they'll come and they have a trailer full of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yep.
they can't set that stuff up by themselves.
No, that's right.
And then the more invested you are in your meeting, like that, making yourself available, the bigger the blessing
That's
you'll
right.
get out of it. I think that's the Lord blessing you for blessing them.
Yeah.
You make yourself available to whoever, however. There's preachers that come, particularly this meeting, and it's been talked about already, that need something.
Sure.
I don't know what they need, and I can't give it to them.
Right.
What I can do is make myself available so
right.
that they don't have to worry about anything. They get here, and the only thing that they have to think about or pay attention to is what they can get from the Lord. And I do the best that I can to make sure that nobody is doing anything except for what they have to do, and they be here. That's
Absolutely.
And then, Keith, I want you to dive into that one below there on pay attention to detail. You were talking about being available. I think those kind of tie together. Talk about some of that. What is it? A person just tell what it is. Pay attention to detail.
If you go to your meetings, and somebody that just goes and is attentive, is watchful, you'll notice we have our lunches for the pastors or the preachers that come in, our guests, and trash needs to be taken out.
Yep.
There's no preacher, a guest of ours, going to come and take out the trash here. If it needs to be done, there ain't no reason to wait on somebody else to do it.
Absolutely.
If there's trash somewhere on the property, just laying there, and it needs to be picked up.
That's right.
It shouldn't sit there for somebody else to get.
Yeah.
There's just be watchful. If you just pay attention, there's something to always to do during a revival meeting. I love that part of revival meeting. I love being able
Being to help. Yeah, just get
Yes.
to help, man.
If somebody that just watches, somebody that just pays attention, will find themselves sometimes busier than they like to be. But it's a blessing being busy for the right reasons.
That's right. Brother Gabe, what about the one on the what not to do list? There's two there.
Well, I guess
Sin
they probably
and
the
making
same thing,
excuses for sin.
But yeah,
You talk about those two. What not to do.
I mean, I guess that's pretty self-explanatory to a point. Of sin is you cannot tell me that the devil's not going to do extra work
That's
on
right.
you
Yeah.
That's right.
to mess you up, because there's nothing he'd like to do than to know that he's taking that fifth spot on the fourth row of your choir and have that person that's going to be sitting out there diving into something wrong, wicked, and he's going to do his best. The devil is to get you messed up, because if he can get you to hinder a service or hinder just a part, he's going to try. He does not like what your church is getting ready to do and have a meeting where God's going to be exalted. He don't like that stuff.
That's right.
So he's going to do everything he can to mess you up and making excuses for it. And there's times when the Lord will, the preacher does a whole lot of harder preaching towards revival time because he's wanting you to get right.
Yeah.
But you sit here on the pew and you go, well, nah, he ain't talking to me. And that's not what he means. And I know who he's talking about, but it ain't me. And people
That's
do that
right.
stuff, and you got to get that stuff taken care of.
Well, I tell you what usually will happen is the devil wants to put conflict in between people in the church during the week
Yep.
of revival. He'll
Yep.
do that. And you can't put on a meeting like what we do, all these different people working together. Somebody will get their feelings hurt.
Oh, yeah.
Something will happen. Somebody will do something, and they'll think, well, that was my place, or this was my place. Or it could be in the rush and the hurry and the work of getting to the meeting. It could be in the family. It could be
Right.
all the conflict between let's hurry and get ready, let's hurry and get there. And that needs to happen. But The devil wants to get everybody worked up, get mom and daddy fussing, get the kids fussing.
Oh,
You
yeah.
say, well, that's the revival's fault. No, that's the devil trying to
Yeah.
use things
Absolutely.
to hinder the revival. Then you walk into service, you've been fussing all the way to church.
And now you gotta
you
get
get here
right.
and sit down, and then the Lord starts moving, but you know that your spouse is watching or your kids are watching, and you feel like a dog. Well, I'm not going to testify, or I'm not going to go to the altar, or I'm not going to do this. And so the devil has won. He has won. He has hindered the meeting by hindering you and putting conflict between you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Let me go to this. Let me go down to this last one right here on the what not to do. And I think this is probably one of the most important. We're fixing to close out, try to get done here. Don't tie up your pastor with foolishness.
Oh,
It never fails. Our church, pretty good sized church, we have a little over 300 people on Sunday morning, so we got a lot of people. And there's only, I'm Pastor Philbeck's assistant, but there's only one pastor, right?
Right.
There's one pastor, and everybody wants his time. Everybody wants his attention. It seems like the week of revival, something will happen in your life, and the devil. And I'm not saying if there's something happened that you don't need your pastor. I'm not saying nothing like that. But there will be something foolish happen that can wait.
Right.
There might be something silly happen that maybe can be avoided until after revival meeting. Now,
Or never.
or maybe it
It's
never needs to
foolishness.
be.
Just leave it where it's at.
Never needs to be brought up. We're not talking about death or tragedy or serious emergency. We're talking about plain old foolishness. Somebody took the last paper towel before I was fixing to grab it in the bathroom, and I'm hurt. None of that. All that is it's a tool of the devil to try to get you not to be able to enjoy revival and get everything that God's got for you. Let me give you two final things on the what to do list. Plan to be there. And when I say be there, I'm not just talking about your attendance. I'm talking about being involved, being invested, your life, be a part of it, be a blessing. Be a help to your pastor. Be a help if you got an assistant pastor. Be a help to him. If it's a song leader, if it's the nursery workers, if you put on a big meeting like we do, help in the kitchen, help in the cleanup. Be there in the middle of it and help. I'd hate to think that my church puts on a meeting and I don't help do anything.
Yeah.
Or
What-
helping all of them. Just jump in and find a place.
Go to a meeting where you're not a member. Ask the pastor if you can help. I mean, the Lord will bless that too. Don't do that unless you're doing it at your church. So
Yeah.
you
That wouldn't end
hypocrite.
good for you.
And then let me give you one more on the what not to do. Make no provision. Romans 13, verse 14. But put ye on the Lord Jesus Christ and make not provision for the flesh. What is the evidence or what is the result? What is the consequence of making provision for the flesh? To fulfill the lust thereof. And so don't make provision for the flesh because the devil's going to win in the end.
Yeah.
And so plan to be there and then make no provision for the flesh, all right? So we want you to you be a part of your church's revival meeting. Be a blessing to your pastor. Don't do anything that would hinder the meeting, obviously. But then don't just show up trying not to cause any problem. Show up and be a blessing.
Absolutely.
Be a blessing. Be involved. Be in the middle of it. And let your preacher know that you're with him. The bottom line of all of this is this. God put on your preacher's heart to have a meeting, to have those preachers or that preacher, and you're a member of that church, so you need to be faithful and be in your place because God expects you to be there because there is something in that meeting that God wants you to get that you will not get
Absolutely.
otherwise. I believe that with all my heart.
Yeah.
And so be a part of that. Now, that being said, let me make a quick announcement. Our revival meeting starts it actually starts Sunday, but as far as people coming into the meeting, that will start on Monday, 7 o'clock. And then Tuesday at 2 o'clock and 7 o'clock, Wednesday, 2 o'clock and 7 o'clock, with a meal served in between those services at 5. We have guest preachers, Chad Bailey from Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania, David Epps from Morristown, Tennessee, Eric Justice from Perry, Florida, Stanley Kelly from Goldsboro, North Carolina, Jeff Ledbetter from Newport, Tennessee, Caleb Lindsay from Kentucky, Josh Montgomery, Alan Montgomery from Concord and Salisbury, Paul Moss from Charlotte, Buster Mullins from Virginia, Keith Voyles from Kentucky, Chad Watson from Hartsville, South Carolina, and then Brother Andy Wells from down in Monroe, North Carolina. So we have a great lineup of preachers, tons of singing, Caleb Lindsay family, Eric Justice, The Harris family from Mississippi, if you've not heard them, they're a real blessing. Brother Josh Montgomery's going to be doing some singing. Keith Voll's family is going to be singing. And then our adult choir, our youth choir, the Philbeck family, and our Love Valley Ensemble will be singing in the meeting as well. So we want you to be a part of it starting on Monday, this coming Monday, and going through Wednesday night. You come be a part of it here in the 2020 Winter Revival. And that's all the time we have, so we want you to tune in. Next week, we'll be back with a new episode. We've got some interviews coming that are going to be great, different preachers that are going to be here at the meeting. And so you be sure to tune in the coming weeks to get a hold of those interviews. Thank you for tuning in today to the Christian Construction Podcast.